Welcome to Scottish Rugby's Guinness Six Nations preview show. Round 2 this weekend, and it's back here, Mossy, at Scottish Gas Murrayfield Stadium on Sunday against Ireland. Pitch is looking good.
2 home games in a row.
I know. Would you know how important is that, though, for, well, momentum, but the right start?
It's really important, and what's most important is that the first one was a victory. We always talk about momentum, we always talk about how important a fast start is, or how big a consequence a poor opening round is. So to get that victory, get the 5 points as well, the bonus point victory, with a bits to work on and lots to improve on, and without the headline of it being a runaway result that early on you thought, wow, Scotland are scored 2 early tries and were in complete control, but then Italy found their feet, and we got a lot right last week in our preview show. We mentioned the impact of the bench from Scotland would be crucial, and the depth they've got there, I thought it was excellent. We mentioned how good around contact and especially around the midfield Italy are, and how close the games are. And we also mentioned that round one's never perfect. There's obviously mistakes and errors, and things won't go your way, and you put under pressure and you have to react to it and stick to your process. That's exactly what happened. So we got a lot right last week, as did the team, but it'll need to improve for if you're going to repeat the victory here on Sunday.
The defence held when it was difficult in patches in the second half, but the defence held out. That's
a really important point. I think Scotland's got an excellent defence. It has done for a long time. It'll have to be really good this weekend. If you think back to the performance in Dublin last year, it was just like mind-blowingly brave and courageous and tough, and really frustrated Ireland. You'll need more of the same and more this weekend. But the best part for me in defence last weekend against Italy was the final quarter, or the final 15 minutes.
15 minutes, yeah.
My mind was maybe jumping forward a few weeks to round 5, and you can see the table as it stands in the bottom left corner of the screen, and everybody's fighting for final positions in the table. That usually often comes into points difference, it comes into bonus points. So to deny Italy anything and to maintain the points difference they had was really important in the moment in round 1, but I think it'll have a bearing in round 5 as well.
When you look at a game like that as well, as a team performance, the job was done. We talked about that at the bench and the starting 15. There were a lot of individual really strong performances. To be fair, we could name 23 names, but the likes of Rory Darge, Hugh Jones, Zander, it was a really solid day.
It was, and that's what you need. That's what you need to win Six Nations matches. You're right, Darge was outstanding. Started really well, controlled a lot of the elements of the big moments of the game where he was at the bottom of them, as he always is. Hugh Jones scores a hat-trick. Blair Kinghorn was immaculate in the air. I mean, everybody, as we know how hard it is to win balls in the air, it's even harder now than it has been before, with access allowed to chasers, and especially when you're 19-all and the game's closing and the momentum's against you and these balls go up in the air. If you don't take those and if you don't assert your dominance, things you can go against you even further. Darcy, but you're right. You could name everyone.
Names,
the effort up front, the number of carries that Sander had, as you say, as Johnny Gray and Gilco, and the effort. It was a really good outing, and it has to be in order to get victories, and it'll have to be even better, as I said earlier on, this weekend against Ireland, because they are just relentless in terms of how they dealt with what England threw at them, how Ireland dealt with being inaccurate and not really getting what they wanted from that first half in terms of missed opportunities. But they didn't waver. They just keep coming and coming and coming, and the level of physicality ultimately didn't blow England away in the end, but it certainly
was still
ground them down, wore them away. And that, if you think back again to that game in Dublin last year, that's kind of what happened to us there as well. We just gave so much, and then it was a couple of errors, and they get the kind of narrow victory. So let's hope the old Scottish Gas Murrayfield is the determining factor, because it'll be a similar game, I think, to what it was last year in Dublin.
Plus there's an 8-day turnaround, and it's been 10 years with Ireland. I mean, it's a long time without a win. So
well, let's be honest, I mean, Ireland have, in that, well, certainly maybe not the whole 10 years, but close to 6-7 years, have been really consistent in the top 3 in the world. So in the last 5 years have been maybe between 1, 2 and 3 in the world. I think they're second at the moment, we're 6th. They're there for a reason. It's because they're really good. It's like you get more opportunities, I suppose, to play Ireland than you used to against when the traditional Southern Hemisphere teams were quite often up there, All Blacks or South Africa as a number 1, number 2 in the world. You kind of get more chance to play on, but it still means they're the best in the world or the second best in the world. It doesn't mean Scotland can't beat them, and if Scotland get it right, of course it can beat them, but over the averages, that's why they're second in the world and Scotland are 6th or 7th. So it's a tough nut to crack. A lot of familiarity between the teams, similarities in terms of injuries as well. Scotland have crucial injuries. Ireland may welcome back a couple of their important players, but picked up 1 or 2 at the weekend as well. I think Scotland are quite fortunate to come through unscathed. So yeah, there's a lot to figure out come Sunday afternoon.
It's a huge opportunity as well, because again, something that we've now are able to really depend upon is that resilience during a game. So when things aren't going, and we saw that against Italy, we don't sort of need to reiterate that point essentially, but that was a great example of sticking in the game for the full 80.
An example of that is, if you take the Italy game, what happened last year in Rome was Scotland got out to a lead, Italy came back, and in that crucial period, when things were going against us, Scotland potentially forced it or certainly gave away too many turnovers, too many penalties. The similar picture was almost playing out on Saturday, and I said in commentary that I think that's one of the things the players and the team will be most proud of, is under pressure when everything was kind of mounting against you and you could feel that sense of this is happening again. Scotland knuckled down. They scored from a left-hand scrum in their own 22 and trusted how they play, why they play like that, and had the individual brilliance to pull it off. So I think it was a step forward in terms of understanding things won't go your way the whole time. Decisions might go your way, they might not go your way. You'll make errors, there'll be times you make mistakes, but that doesn't define your game. It just means you get the next bit right, and there's a good example of that at the weekend.
Do you think David Nucifora, in his role as Scotland's performance director, but having left Ireland recently, would have been having any chats with Gregor this week going into this game?
Yeah, I assume so. I mean, the teams are all pretty open. I think there's a lot of shared learning. The analysts and the analysis is so good. There's no really that many secrets, I don't think. And players meet and play alongside each other in clubs and play against each other internationally, and definitely trends developing. You can see in teams. I think a quick example would be James Lowe's break for Ireland's, was it Tyburn's try, where the kind of came down that first channel, shielded. You probably get away with that once, and then everybody looks at it and everybody expects it. So it's what happens next. Do you do it again and double bluff it, or do you have a similar setup and the ball goes elsewhere? And that's the type of stuff that both Scotland and Ireland and all the teams will be doing this weekend. So there's no many secrets, because there's so many eyes and there's so much technology and there's so much nous and understanding in these squads and in these teams that the innovation works, but it usually has as big an effect the first time, and then teams are able to nullify it thereafter.
One Scot who has already seen Ireland up close in action this Guinness Six Nations campaign already is Holly Davidson.
She was on the wing.
On the wing.
She was on the line.
She
was on the line.
She was on the line for that game with Ireland and England, and great to see her performing at the top level, at the top tier of world rugby now. Consistently.
Yeah, it's the same thing we say. She's so good, she's so consistent, and I wonder if Gregor will be tapping Holly on the shoulder saying, listen, what was the mood like at the side of the pitch? What was the communications? Is there anything you noticed? I don't know if officials are allowed to do that or what to see, but this is how close these games are, that any little bit of information you can gather that can help you prepare for the challenge ahead is important. But she's doing her stuff as always.
And of course, it's not just the men's first team that's involved this weekend. The under-20s are back in action again at Hive on Saturday. A huge opportunity for them, but also a huge encounter to prepare for. Yeah,
Ireland are traditionally really strong. Age group rugby, they've been very strong over the last few years. I watched their game last Thursday night. They played England in the opening game, and it was foul conditions in Cork. It was blowing a gale, and there wasn't a huge amount of rugby played. England had a gigantic team, like forwards, backs as well, but mainly the forwards are huge, and I think they relied on their power to try and blow Ireland away. The England won narrow in the end, but I was really impressed with how physical and how determined and how that relentless, I suppose, is a term used with the men's team that you use within their 20s as well. Just the relentless nature and defence to stop the bigger teams. So they're battle hardened. So I think Scotland hopefully can learn from that and play quickly, attack space, keep the ball moving, attack the short sides, try not to give anything too direct, an obvious kind of play so Ireland can see what's coming because their defence was sound. I think we're going to have to challenge their decision making and try and find those edges against a quality side, and so hope the 20s can do that.
Well, let's turn the focus now even closer to the under-20s with one man who is no stranger to the setup. Time now for a wee catch-up then with former Scotland under-20 and current Edinburgh hooker Jerry Blyth-Lafferty. Good to have you. When I say former under-20s, it is your birthday this week, so there's definitely no chance of any 20s action for you.
Yeah, no, past it now, unfortunately.
21 though this week.
Yeah, it's creeping in.
And you've just celebrated early with a finisher with Edinburgh Rugby, a fitness finisher just at the gym. You're a wee bit flushed.
It was pretty tough.
On the walk bike.
Still sweating, unfortunately.
What does that look like when we talk about, I mean, you were giving us a wee clue there, but when you talk about a brutal session in the gym with Edinburgh, what does that look like?
It's basically just to finish off, they split everyone into a team, try and go fairly even with positions, like split the hookers, split the props, and then you'll go around stations, just time capped, and it's like, however long on the walk bike, and then onto the ski erg, and then you'll maybe do some weights as well, and it's just all in the one go, a bit of a circuit. It's quite tough.
And a heap at the end.
They split it deliberately with your position, so you go head to head with somebody you're head to head with. It always works, doesn't it?
Definitely.
Gets a bit spicy.
Do you miss those days?
No. Maybe a wee bit. Nah, it's fine, but I suppose that's because it's a Six Nations obviously on at the moment. You're with Edinburgh. URC kicks off again next week. Edinburgh plays Zebra, but in the following week of Six Nations. But we'll look back and forward just with your experience of under-20s. Were you at the game on Friday night? Obviously, your wee brother, or your younger brother was playing. A disappointing result, really, to open with a loss against Italy. What was your view on the performance?
Yeah, I think they'll take some positives away from that, definitely.
Scrum.
Like the first 20 minutes. I mean, the scrum was like great throughout the game. That's one positive. The forwards up front really did well too, but they will be kicking themselves a little bit. That was sort of beat themselves, and that was there for the taking.
But Italy are known for producing at that grade and that level. It's a really important ground for them in terms of that under-20s age and that cohort. So it was an important trip for them too to come off. There was a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were speaking before. Like they've been really strong the last 2 or 3 years. They lost their coach, or their coach was moved or promoted to Zebra, and he's made a difference there. So they had a new coaching staff, quite a lot, maybe a younger crop of 20s as well. So there was I don't think they were quite as strong as they've been the last couple of years, but it's difficult, as you know. The opening weekend, the consequence of losing or not starting well is really quite severe. So I think it sometimes inhibits players and decision making. And I thought there was a lot of good in Scotland, but Italy just probably made fewer mistakes, probably played with a bit more balance. But as you say, there's definitely positives in that 20s. You played with a lot of the guys, and you'll hope they go well against Ireland this week.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's like a lot of good players in there that it was their first year, 20s my last year. So I've played alongside a lot of these really good players that like even now have got even more experience, and they're at the tail end of their 20s, and they're like really good for leading the boys. Your
time in a 20s camp last summer was a long stint. It was about a couple of months, wasn't it? About a good 8 weeks or so. And when you're in camp and in that sort of high pressure environment for that amount of time, what were the challenges that you faced?
I mean, it's definitely non-stop, and everything that you're doing is full out. Like you demand high expectations from like the person to your side. Like everyone pushes each other really hard. The coaches, they know that you're capable of it as well. So like if they don't see that day in day out, then you're going to get told.
How quickly do you learn? Because you are exposed to probably more coaching than as a group, as you would be the other weeks of the year, because it is so intense. So you're getting more review, more analysis, more recovery, more coaching. You have to learn pretty quickly, and I think historically the 20s they've improved as the championship's gone on. I assume you have to be a wee bit selective in the amount of information that you can act on, because so much comes your way in such that short, intense period.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think they do really well to split it down to sort of like more condensed like information that we're getting,
or identify the key points to work on.
Definitely makes it easier to take on smaller bits of information, you know, periodically through the week rather than right in the one go. Like it's a bit information overload, but yeah, it's definitely important to just bounce after a loss like that. Like that's good fun.
Yeah, does Ollie pick your brain on that? Your wee brother who's still involved?
Definitely. Just the phone's out and he's looking at scrums at the dinner table. Like my mum gets him in trouble for that, but he's always got his phone out asking me what I think of that.
It's a good point you raise just before we move on to your relationship with your brother. But like, it's a good point you raise actually about the importance of that 20s setup as being a learning ground, not just for your skill set, your and effort up in the game to that pre-test match level, but also the cultural, the environment of high performance.
I mean, it'll mirror as closely as possible mirror the men's national team in terms of the structure of the week. You know, your day off being, you know, in for a couple of days, one day off, then back in, the clarity sessions, the time you train, you even train alongside the national team in some of the final weeks as well. So you are preparing these players for international rugby during playing international rugby. I hope that doesn't overtake, because I do like the kind of creativity and the freedom that age grade rugby should have. I think if you get overly structured and overly representative of what happens out here, by the time these players, and even in a year or so or 2 years' time, reach the men's national team, the structures and the strategies and the trends in the game will have changed. So I do like and hope the fact that the under-20s, although it has to mirror that in some ways, still has a creativity. And you see that with some of the individual players and the individual attacks. It's still got a level of freedom, but it's preparing them for what's around the corner. Your
brother then, in your relationship together, so you being a hooker, he's a prop, your dad was a prop as well. Was it inevitable that you were going to go into rugby? Was that the direction of travel?
We done a few sports when we were younger, but rugby's definitely one that like stuck out. I mean, there was never any point where we would be like, oh, I'm maybe too tired to go to this, or I can't be bothered going to that, but it was always rugby was just stand out. Like we both from a young age really wanted to do it and really enjoyed it. So.
Did you do a bit of boxing as well?
Yeah, we did. I did just
with
box.
each other. Or
you got a wee smile on his face when he said that. You like the boxing, yeah?
Yeah, no, that was good fun, but
always rugby.
Yeah, always rugby over it. And then when rugby got more serious, I had to like turn our focus to that.
That's a difficult decision. So a lot of parents, a lot of young players, a lot of folk, you know, that do listen and engage, that's a decision that a lot of people have to make. Mm-hmm. And even from a parent's point of view, your fixtures, your kids' schedule gets ridiculous. How did you go about making that decision? You said it was always rugby, mm-hmm. but at what point do you feel ready to disconnect from the other sports that you would have been doing on a Saturday or a Sunday?
I don't know. I think it comes part to do with like what are you better at, mm-hmm. but it is a lot to do with what do you enjoy. And rugby was always the one that I got the most enjoyment out of. But yeah, like you said, there's a lot of like sports that kids go between when they're younger, you know, like 3 and 4 days a week, they're going to different clubs and stuff like that. But I think it is just whatever they enjoy most, and that for me was rugby.
And through that period of being involved in Boroughmuir all your career, let's say, or your rugby journey,
yeah,
you would have supported and came to Edinburgh games as well. Was there a hooker or was there a player that you used to look up to or enjoy watching in the Edinburgh colours? And if so, are they still involved?
Well, I'll say Ross Ford.
He's still
Ross Ford
like
for me. Yes. Although quite the opposite hooker to me. He's a big guy.
Started in the back row.
Yeah, I used to like watching him.
Mm-hmm. Our highest men's cap holder as
mm-hmm.
well for Scotland.
Thanks.
Yeah. by a few.
He got one more. Top man, and still involved. You to work with him in the age grade setup and strength and conditioning role as well. Did you pick his brain at times?
A little bit. Obviously, he had a different style of play to me, but there is a lot. Like he has got a lot of experience and a lot of like wisdom to sort of pass on.
Like Fordy, I'll be pleased with that.
I will, won't he?
You wouldn't have played against him in Super Cs because he played a bit of Super Cs as well, but you would miss that.
That would have been you would have been away. Yeah,
I would say so.
You look a wee bit relieved there.
Yeah, no, wouldn't fancy that.
It's a great question though. It's always interesting to hear who you've looked up to or who you know, whether it's like a Rambo, whether it's a Ross Ford, but in terms of the environment in Edinburgh at the moment, What's that like from as a learning ground for you as well? Is there that leadership team that you feel quite happy to chat with, and is that is it approachable in that way?
Definitely. I mean, there's some world-class players at Edinburgh, like the likes of Hamish Watson, like Jamie Ritchie, Magnus Bradbury. Like, these are all guys that you've been watching since you were young. Like, the wisdom and like the knowledge that they have is like second to none. So going to them, and they're all very approachable. Like, there's no sort of like hierarchy. Like, everyone will chat to everyone, and it's quite easy to go up and pick someone's brains over.
That's important, isn't it?
Oh, it's always the older players that enjoy it and they want to do it as well. Like, because somebody would have done it to them 10, 15, however many years ago. So it's an important kind of thing that gets a skill, and it's encouraged. But yeah, it's a lot of people take a lot of pride in helping other people from. There's a lot of competition in a professional environment, but it very seldomly manifests itself in you or somebody not helping somebody else. It's important.
With the international players away, of course, on Guinness Six Nations duty with Scotland, that then leaves openings for the likes of yourself with the Edinburgh outfit. How important are the next few weeks for you in terms of impressing at club level?
Definitely, really important. I mean, 3 hookers away with the national team at the moment, so that's just like great to see for them, but it leaves just a couple left at Edinburgh, including myself. It means that we get like a lot of reps throughout the week, and it becomes more important. You've got like more of a role in the day-to-day running of like a training session, and pressure's on, but like it's really a good experience and great opportunity when these guys are away on national duties.
And just a week before that, obviously looking ahead to this weekend with under-20s playing Ireland, your experiences against Ireland the last couple of years, it's they've been quite dominant over Scotland under 27. What do you expect to see this weekend? I
mean, definitely my first year they were dominant. The second year, like that was a really close game, and
it was over there last year, wasn't it?
That was in Cork. Yeah, I think this year will be similar to that last year. I think that'll be a tight game. Like, Ireland's historically really, really good, and but I do think Scotland can, like, they've got the capability to beat them. So,
well, on that very cheery note, positive note, we wish Scotland under-20s all the best, and for you yourself, Jerry, we wish you all the very best during the next few weeks with Edinburgh Rugby.
Thank you very much.
Well, there you have it, a preview ahead of round 2 of the Guinness Six Nations. The men's team are in action, and of course the under-20s as well. You can keep across the latest news and content, as always, via scottishrugby.org or via Scottish Rugby's social media channels.